Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod with our Oregon pregame show presented by Fanduel Sportsbook, your go-to source for betting on the sports you love to watch. Whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line, you'll find all the odds you need at Fanduel app. Easy to download, you can get going right away. Just head on over to the App Store and get that taken care of. So a reminder today to thank all those great sponsors of the show, Patreon supporters of the team, Cleves Level, Bill Church, Brian O'Donnell, Michael Bosnick, Chad Hickey, Mike Huntoon, and Scott Driscoll. Rebound Green supporters, Adam Walzak, Dan Rankin, Jim L., Paul Marsh, and Greg Bamer, and all the Scott Sile supporters on Patreon as well, as Richard Wagenheim, Kenneth Cromet, Roger Bronsick, Al, Michael Emmerich, Joe and VT, and Jim Moraney on Substack. If you want to support the show and get an ad-free copy of the audio of the show to email directly to your inbox, head over to our support page at tffinots.com/support to get the links. Well, MSU completes its West Coast trip on Tuesday evening in Eugene, which is actually a blessedly early game for us here in the East Coast time, relatively speaking, with a 9 p.m. tip. And what a season Oregon's had, and I mean that in the worst possible light. They after you and Minnie had them picked at the finish somewhere in the middle to upper middle of the Big Ten pack, this team may struggle to not even play in the first day of the Big Ten tournament on Tuesday because they are 8-10 overall. They're 1-6 in the Big Ten. 3 of the last 4 losses have been by double digits. This is a team, maybe a program, moving in the wrong direction. I think you had them as a 7 seed, and just looking through our predictions and our fans of the Beat Rod contest, I think the lowest anyone had them was 13th, and I think they're going to struggle to get to 13. But we'll see.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So they're down to 88th now in KenPom overall. Their best 2 players, and this is part of the problem this season. One aspect of which is, I guess, pretty significant, is a lot of injury problems with their 2 best players, point guard Jackson Shelstad, center Nate Biddle. They just have been hurt, and then even when they come back, I'm guessing they're not totally healthy and ready to go. And now Shelstad's out for the rest of the season, which I think Altman announced after the Michigan loss by 10 points on Saturday. He had this hand injury, which happened preseason, and just hasn't been healing properly.
He had a damning line, but just before the Michigan game, where he said, "I'm not surprised," is where it got to, where he said Jackson really wants to play, but the trouble is his hand's injured, and every time he dribbles or shoots, it hurts. So for a guard, especially
the point guard, that's a problem.
Leaves you, you're not, and it happened preseason. I remember he got back a little earlier, I think, than they were originally anticipating. Because if I remember correctly, they were talking about middle of December for him when he first heard it. And he got back much sooner than that. And, his numbers are okay. I mean,
he's played 12 games, 15 and a half points a game. I mean,
but the efficiency is way down. He has not shot the ball the way he did either of his previous seasons at Oregon. So that's where I think you've seen the effect, where you could say, it's not really 100%, but still he was being productive, at least from a point scoring perspective. It's just that, and he's actually doing a better job running their team in terms of, assists and assist to turnover ratio than he did last season. So on the surface, you could say, well, everything was fine, but clearly it wasn't. Yeah. And he re-aggravated it. And that's the thing this year. We've seen it in several places around the country. There are guys who get these injuries. The big one is shoulder injuries. But there just seem to be a lot of these guys who get hurt, come back, and they're never quite able to shake it. Kentucky has had that problem with 2 players, the 2 guys who missed the Michigan State game, their point guard Lowe and their center, the guy who's supposedly a first-round draft pick that's barely played this year. Both those guys have tried to come back, and it's failed. And I think they've officially shut down the point guard now for the season. But there's lots of examples of this. Oregon has the misfortune to have 2 of them.
Yeah, and their 2 best players.
Yes.
Not just be 2 players. They have their 2 best.
100%.
Because Nate Biddle, he's played most of the games. He's played 15 of the 18, leading them in scoring at 16.3 game, rebounding second on the team, 6.7 a game. But he has an ankle injury. Now he's a foot injury. So for all those you listening who think Michigan State's got to do something with their floor, here we go. But and so now he's out at least until sometime in February, according to Altman. And so
and you got to wonder too. Biddle is a 5th-year guy. I mean, this is going to be it. I wonder for him that he's a marginal NBA prospect, but you got to wonder, does he come back?
Well, he's got a pro career of some sort, right? If he wants it.
Yeah,
somewhere.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Does he come back, or does he just say, you know what? And trust me, the scene in Eugene by the time that happens is going to be bleak.
Yeah.
Bleak.
I mean, there's no, aside from the Big Ten tournament, there's really no postseason opportunity for this team, barring some miraculous finish. But without Chelsea, you just can't. I just can't imagine it possible.
Well, and Biddle has suffered from it too, because as you say, he's got, again, on the surface, they're good numbers, but he's not been better than he was last season. And that was, for me, and I'm pretty sure I said this in our preview, the reason I picked them where I did is I felt they've got 2 guys back, veterans, who are potential all Big Ten guys. And that was a reasonable position to take at the start of the year, and if they were healthy. And that's a hell of a platform to build from. Michigan State didn't have that.
Right.
Michigan State had guys back, but they didn't have 2 guys with that kind of proven production who were returning. And for Oregon to just, it's been a hell of a year, to say the least.
Yeah. Because they haven't, even when they had, well, maybe they didn't have Biddle or Showstead early, but they were struggling the very first games out of the.
They've never been right.
Like Hawaii. They just have not looked good. I mean,
They've
who did they
never
even beat in the Big
right.
Ten? Did they beat Rutgers? I just can't. I'm trying to imagine what team they beat.
Yeah.
Or was it Maryland?
I think that's no. It was Maryland. That's their win.
Okay,
Their win is over Maryland. It's just, yeah. It's crazy stuff, and I didn't see it coming. I don't think anybody saw it coming. But I will say, the impact of this is. And we don't hear a lot about it because Oregon is not great, to say the least, and because they're out there, in the corner of the country, and news doesn't get. You just don't have the focus that you would have if it was in traditional Big Ten country. But you really do have to wonder about Dana Altman now.
Yeah,
Dana Altman for the last few years, and this is a guy who's a very good coach. Never been an elite coach, but has been a very good coach for a long time.
Because he's a Creighton before, right?
Long run at Creighton. Oversaw the rise of Creighton from, Missouri Valley to. Now, he wasn't the guy. He wasn't the guy who delivered them to the Big East. That was McDermott, but he was definitely the guy, I think, who established that program being what it has become. He was the architect, and then McDermott has finished it off. But he's had a really long and good run at Oregon. Not a great one, but he's had occasional tournament runs. He's had years where they were ranked highly. So you definitely say, I think he's pretty clearly got to be the best coach in Oregon history. They were not a school with deep basketball tradition. You could easily argue before he got there, Oregon State had superior basketball tradition to Oregon. But he's flipped that. But
and that's a Nike thing too, probably more than
huge
anything.
deal. And during his tenure, huge deal, no question. But lately there have been, because he's up there. He's been around a long time. He's up there.
Yeah, he's 67 years. I was just looking at him. He's 67 years old. And he's started in 2010 at Oregon.
So there have been rumors the last couple of off seasons about him retiring. And this is it's probably less frequent now than it used to be, because programs are less dependent upon high school recruiting than they used to be. But
where it's much the concern. Right.
And for opposing coaches to use it against you in recruiting. Right. But for whatever reason, he's really, really backed off the last couple of years in terms of his high school recruiting. Last year, so this year's freshman class, he had one American freshman. He ended up adding a couple of overseas guys late, but he had one American freshman, a kid from, I think, from Berrien Springs, down kind of in your neck of the woods.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Who was roughly, I'm saying,
yeah,
that shocked everyone that he got a Big Ten offer, and he hasn't played a role for them this year. JJ Frakes is the kid's name. This year, he's got one good recruit, very good recruit, ex-NBA and I think Arizona Wildcat, Trevor Ariza, his son. But that's it. Again, only one high school recruit. So that's been a big problem. Now, you would think, well, what's the big deal? It's Oregon. They've got the Nike money. They can just go live in the portal. Well, he hasn't been great in the portal either. And that's less a matter of resources or willingness to do it than I think it is the choices that he's made. Because as you mentioned, even when they had Shellstedt and Biddle, and however reduced they were, those guys were still putting up numbers when they played. But the team has been terrible all year long, without those guys. And it's, I think that roster is just, when you watch them play, it's just shy of talent. It's shy of real players. And they had to do some wilds. I mean, they added the Chinese kid we'll talk about, who's their starting point guard now. They added on October 2nd. He wasn't even in our season preview.
Right.
That's how desperate they were for bodies. It's like, how does that happen? So all that plus the results of this year have me thinking maybe this actually is finally it, despite his protestations that he's not done. It's starting to feel, it's not the same situation exactly, but it's starting to feel to me a little bit like Fran in February last year.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, and again, it's a similar deal where I can't envision Oregon firing him, but you wonder because because of the Nike connection and because they're now a Big Ten member, that would be a job that I think would obviously attract some people. I don't have a good feel the way we kind of did for what the landscape would look like if Fran lost that job. You kind of knew the names that, we figured it would be exactly the guys that they ended up focusing on. McCollum, DeVries, there were guys that made sense. I don't know the landscape well enough for Oregon right now without looking into it, but I've got to believe anybody who's got a pulse at the mid-major level in the western part of the country, and not just the Pacific Coast, but, the Rockies, those areas, anybody out there, I would think would be very attracted to that job. And I would not at all be surprised if some high major coaches might be willing to move, particularly if they had commitments as to NIL investment from Oregon. And I would suspect that they would. So that's something to watch, but it does kind of feel like the end of something to me right now. Because they're just having a terrible season to date, and it's just not going to get better.
Well, the future next year doesn't look better, right? Like they were in the bidding war of whatever for Taylor. He ends up committing to Michigan State. Yep. That was, the high profile one. And apparently their money wasn't enough to convince him to go. And so, makes you wonder about things.
And, and here's the other thing. So Shellstedt has a year left. And I think he's probably played enough this year that I don't know that he can get this year back. Maybe he can try, and who knows
what it's worth, what it means.
Things are, but he's at least got one more year. If he's, and I assume his hand will eventually be fine. If he's healthy, that guy goes into the portal, he'd be a major dollar player. I'm not saying that I think he's definitively the key to a national championship or anything, but that guy would have a lot of interested parties, a lot of them. And, so they've got Kwame Evans has a year left after this year. He's doing enough. And if you're 6'10", you can walk and chew gum at the same time, and he can. People will be interested in that. Like, they're going to have a challenge holding on to their guys, in my opinion. So, it would it could, whether Altman's back or not, it could look dramatically different next year. And that might be a good enough reason to say, let's start over.
Yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that a certain coach from St. Louis is going to end up in the Big Ten next year somewhere. I don't know where that is going to be, but I think there'd be plenty of openings in the Big Ten.
Coach from St. Louis. Oh, you're talking about Josh
Shirts,
the ex-Indiana State guy. Yeah, he's doing I'm not surprised. It took him a year, I guess, at St. Louis. Last year they were okay. They weren't great, but they've been really good so far this year. And yeah, I'm with you. It would not be surprising. But Oregon obviously would be the Big Ten. That's way out of the footprint you'd expect for him, but you never know.
Right. But it's still, the right conference perhaps. But so anyway,
I think the only question with that, just as you bring it up, is I'm trying to think who's vulnerable. Altman definitely.
Well, I think Peichel's done. I don't think he's coming back. And then
maybe. Yeah. That's tough.
But I don't know that's the job you want.
No,
Penske doesn't care enough to get rid of Rhodes,
especially if you're not an East Coast guy. I don't think you want to take the Rutgers job. That's been tried there and failed. They took poor Gary Waters, who was a great assistant coach for a long time, got a head coaching job at Kent State, and was the architect of the team that then Stan Heath took the year after he took the Rutgers job. Stan Heath took Kent State to the Elite Eight with Gary Waters' team. Way back in the Stone Age. Antonio Gates was the player, Hall of Fame tight end. Antonio Gates was the key player for Kent State. But Gary Waters was a great college coach, and he took that Rutgers job as a Midwest guy and just fell flat.
Yeah.
It's tough. You're right, though. That's the one. We've had so many. Is it like 8 new coaches in the last 2 years? I think
we had 4 last year. I think that's probably right. I mean, we got 18
3 or 4 this year. Minnesota, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland. That's 4.
Yep. I think that's what I said, 4 this year. I think
that's half the league is turned over in 2 years. So none of those guys are probably going to lose their jobs, is my point.
Yeah. And then exactly.
And then, you have the established programs. They're not going anywhere. So, I mean, not a lot.
That'll probably be the best job in the Big Ten available next year.
Oregon and Rutgers would be the 2, I guess, right now.
I can't see Maryland canning it.
No,
maybe Ohio State, but probably not Ohio State. That'd be the only potential.
It's one of those deals where they won yesterday over UCLA, and Ohio State is doing just enough right now where you say
like they do every year.
Right now they're on the right side of the bubble. Now where they end up is anybody's guess. But they're going to be on that borderline. I think coming into late February, you're going to be seeing Ohio State in bubble talk. I just about guarantee it. And so that's a tough deal. Like, what do you do with Diebler? I would agree he might be – that would be the low-key guy who could be vulnerable that you don't necessarily see coming, just because that was such a half-ass – I mean, no offense to him, but the fact that they did that was shocking.
Yeah.
Just shocking. And that means that you're vulnerable. But then it comes the other direction. How much does Ohio State care?
Well, right. And that's just like with Penn State. Like, you could imagine Rhodes getting replaced, but they don't care enough to replace him at this point.
I would not pull the plug on Mike Rhodes. I mean,
I don't think so either, but
they're struggling right now, but they've been really competitive. I thought they were very good his first 2 years, given what he had to work with. And he, as we talked about when MSU played them, they are so young. He's actually one of the few guys who's trying to do it in a way that could actually prove to be sustainable. So I don't think he's in any danger.
Yeah. And then I think Collins is safe at Northwestern, and then you got Greg Gard, who's been on the edge occasionally, but he's doing plenty.
He's doing enough. That's it. Even the guys that aren't, some of those guys you mentioned aren't winning big, they're not on the border yet.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Oregon again. Talk about them in offense. They're 84th overall in offense. Where they offensive rebound really well at 29th. But
that's it. That's it. That's where it stops.
They are 260th with turnover percentage. So that is, I wonder what percent of their possessions are ending in a turnover. It must be like almost 30% at 260.
It's gotta be bad. I'll give you that.
It's gotta be about 30%.
Bear with me. Oregon turnover percentage, sorry, is God damn it. There we go. 18.6%.
Oh, so every fifth possession.
Almost every fifth possession. Yeah, that's awful. I mean, Michigan State's been really bad in that area lately. And for comparison, well, I hesitate. Michigan State's a robust 18%.
Yeah, so about
not
the same.
that much better. Yeah.
So shooting doesn't help them any, unfortunately for them. So they're 199th at 3-point shooting at 33.5%. From twos, they're 207th, which is much worse than Michigan State now. They're also sub 200 free throw percentage. The only, I guess, good thing you could say about them is they're not last in the league in conference play. They're 16th in offense, but they're still, for what you had the expectation coming in the season, that's shockingly terrible.
Oh, yeah, it's off. It's fallen off a cliff bed. And again, they're 16th, where you have to consider a good number of those Big Ten games, not all of them, but a good number of them, they had both Shellstead and Biddle.
Right.
They're not going to have either one for until the middle of February at least. So I would expect it's set to get a lot worse before it gets better.
They did score 70 some points against Michigan, who's
they did
the two defense in the country.
But here's the thing. Yeah.
I just like setting you up here.
that defense is sprinting some leaks. But I would say this: Oregon really fought in that game. They played hard. But I think the idea that they're going to be able to sustain that, we see it all the time where teams lose guys, and for a game,
right, everyone rises up.
It's almost like, you get hurt, but adrenaline carries you through for a brief period of time, and then it wears off and the pain settles in. I think Oregon's about to feel a lot of pain.
I'd say fortunately for Oregon, they have to play both ends of the court, but that is unfortunate for them because they're not good there. There's 94th in defense, which is not end of the world bad, but they're definitely going the wrong direction. And for the Big Ten, that's not good, pretty bad. Yeah.
Standards. Yeah.
They block shots okay at 52nd in the country, but they do not have very good 2-point defense at 131st. Against threes, they're even worse. They're 159th. They're 195th in defensive rebounding. They don't force turnovers. They're sub 250 there. The opponents also tend to hit the free throws against them, which is just kind of random luck thing. And they are 360th.
They're 360th in they're 360th in opposing free throw percentage, which is
they're fouling the wrong guys is what is happening, right?
Near the bottom of the nation.
Yes, it's 365.
Terrible luck. And then that's compounded by the fact that their defensive foul rate is at number 129, which isn't like off the charts bad, but it's far from good. And when teams are hitting all the free throws they get against you, it's not mitigating things much.
Right.
It would be one thing if teams were hitting everything, but they were, where Michigan State is in defensive free throw rate.
Right.
Where they're, almost in the top 40, and you say, okay, they're hitting, but they're not getting a ton of attempts. No, they're getting enough attempts that it's doing damage.
So their defense is slightly better in relation to their offense. They're 13th in the league in conference games with defense. But again, that's near the bottom, which is what you won't expect. And you just imagine the 2-point defense without Biddle is going to get worse too.
Yep, 100%. Because he's the primary shot blocker. He was averaging better than 2 a game, and that's gone now for a month.
Well, they are a slow-paced team, so they're 244th in average length of offensive possession, 247th in overall tempo. So that means they're just about as slow in defense on the defensive side. So
and I think it's going to be likely. This would be is a guess. Call it an educated guess. I think it's likely to get even slower because if you're Dana Altman and you're playing these games where, you're at a talent disadvantage against Penn State. You're at a talent disadvantage against Northwestern. What you want to do to give yourself the best chance to compete is find ways to shrink the game. And the best way you do that is just by running clock and minimizing the number of possessions in a given game. That way, if you happen to be hot or the other team is ice cold, you've got a better chance. The more, generally speaking, the rule of thumb is the more possession, so the faster tempo that a game is played at, the more that better talent wins out.
Right.
It's math, right?
Right.
More opportunities means better chances that things revert to the mean. Both ways.
We're just mathing here. Just mathing.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a reminder, of course, to check out FanDuel. You can go to your app store, and whether you're on Android or you're on an iPhone, head on over there, get the FanDuel app. You can get quick access to all the wagers you need for whatever sport you're watching. Obviously, NFL playoffs are going on right now. Depending when you listen to this, the national championship game, and then also, of course, college basketball. So head on over to FanDuel right now, pick that up. So, of course, we do this before the lines come out. On Bartovic, I have +7 right now. So 7-point edge for Michigan State.
+9 on KenPom.
+9 KenPom.
Yeah.
I would think with the now shutting down Shelstead and Biddle, I think you pound that, and I think Michigan State. I have a hard time seeing Michigan State not coming in with the double-digit win in this game. I mean, things can happen, obviously.
I mean, yeah, they can. It's the road, and it's it's weird, and maybe that adrenaline carries over for one more game. But I'm with you. I think that if you assume the line comes in somewhere around 8, if you can get that, I would be very inclined to take it. Michigan State impressed me in their game. Yet we're recording this on Sunday, so their game yesterday evening at Washington, as I said many times, with their steadiness.
Yeah.
They weren't spectacular, but they just came out and took care of business the way you want to see a team do it against an inferior opponent. And they did that. And Washington is a much better team right now than Oregon. They're much deeper, much more talented. And you saw what Michigan State did. So my thinking is that Michigan State's, the maturity that they play with is far more likely than not to produce at least a solid effort in terms of execution. The effort will always be there, but I mean, in terms of the way they execute. And if that's the case, it's hard seeing Oregon staying within single digits. Really hard.
Yeah, I would. And if it were me, I don't know what the over-under is going to be. I think I'd just stay away from that because I have really no idea what this Oregon team is going to be and what Michigan State can do to them.
Well, they were up. They were up 10. I mean, the Michigan game was 152 points,
right?
81-71. I would, as I just got done saying, if it were me and I were Dana Altman, I would be looking at this and saying, I don't want any part of getting into a transition game with Michigan State.
Right.
So, and just in general, you want a lower possession game if you're at a talent disadvantage. So I would think the under would be a smart bet, but you got to see where that number comes in.
Right. I mean, I think you've got to imagine Oregon in general wants this game played in the 60s. Then they,
absolutely.
Right.
50s if they can get it. But yeah,
like Nebraska, right? Let's be honest. That was all right. So the other thing, sort of interesting thing, I was just looking at the lines for NCAA champions on FanDuel. So number one, as far as I know you can't short things on gambling, but Michigan at a little under 4-1 odds to win the national title.
Short that all day long.
I know, but you can't. I don't think you can do that on gambling.
No, but you're right. Yeah, you would.
Arizona is next at 5.5 to 1, and then Purdue at 12 to 1, which I think is probably about right because there's so much stuff that has to go right for you to win.
Yes.
Michigan State 35 to 1. I still think they're undervalued. I know we talked about before when it came to the Big Ten, winning the Big Ten. I'm going to guess that if there's a tie for the Big Ten, so this is the one thing about that Big Ten championship. I think you have to outright win it. So I'm guessing you don't actually win. You probably just get your money back if there's a tie, but boy, I mean, 35 to 1, I think if you want to put $100, you might be pretty happy or something like that,
but this is,
inclined.
Relative to Michigan and the ludicrous odds that exist with that team right now. This is the weakness of doing things in an analytical way, and I'm saying that half facetiously, but that it's a weakness, but it is true. Michigan did so much work during that month where they were just hammering the living crap out of teams.
Yeah, right.
That it will take a while for that to unwind. We talk about with Ken Palm, we usually talk about how you can't really start to put a lot of faith in the numbers until we get, late December, because these black box ratings that he uses to start the season with, which he doesn't disclose what goes into it, they take a while to work their way out of the system. Meaning that as we have more actual data, it starts to override whatever nominal stuff he started with. And it's also true once you've had, and a month is not an insignificant period of time. So Michigan piled up a lot of data where they were just putting up ungodly numbers in almost every respect.
Yeah.
Now, though, if you're watching, I was saying this on the Spartan Mag board earlier this morning, there's still among some national people this talk that Purdue and Michigan are jointly, it's gotten to at least be jointly. It was just Michigan for a while. And now it's jointly that they are somehow a cut above the rest of that upper tier, which I think is 5 teams deep.
Yeah.
Look, I understand recency bias and all that, but the fact is, the last 2 weeks, the last 4 games for Michigan and for Purdue, not only do they not look like they are a cut above the rest of that group, they look like team 4 and 5.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's how it ends up. Purdue's got big scheduling advantages, and, either one of them or both of them could find another level. I mean, look, Purdue maybe should have lost to USC yesterday. They've had some struggles at Mackey.
Yeah, weird.
Michigan, terrible, barely got by against PSU, gets beat at home by Wisconsin. And though they won their 2 games in the Pacific Northwest, they didn't exactly cover themselves in glory doing it in either one. They won. That's the job, but they don't look like a world-beating team. They don't look like a team that has separated from the pack. Far from it. I honestly think if you are trying to get a gauge, and this is something that, my point being, the analytics are not going to tell you yet. The analytics are still going to tell you Michigan is a cut above everybody.
Right.
But your eyes and the numbers from the games they've played in the last 2 weeks tell you something different. I've watched enough of Illinois to be bought in on them. Not that they're going to necessarily win it, but they're going to be there. They're making as good. They have a case they can make right now to be as good as anybody in the league. Better than last year by a long shot.
Oh, yeah.
Michigan State. I have a bias. I understand that. But I think objectively, the facts will tell you. I mean, if Michigan's so great, we're going to play a comparative score game, back-to-back games. Michigan State beat Washington by 17. Michigan won by 10. And I think Michigan State, the quality of basketball they're playing pretty clearly indicates they're here to stay in the contender pack. And then Nebraska still can't lose to anybody. And they are rocking teams. They're not winning marginally. They're going in and they're smacking teams. So to me, they're the team that has the case right now. If you're going to single anybody out as playing the best basketball in the league, it's Nebraska. So I think that's the problem, apart from just the absurdity of the numbers that Michigan has in general in terms of the odds on this stuff, on winning the Big Ten or winning the NCAA tournament. But you're right. If you're a 4-1, you better be
UNLV?
Yeah, you better be 1990 UNLV. Yeah. That's who you better be. You better be 2009 North Carolina. You better be that level of team. And I'm sorry for all the nonsense that national guys talked about Michigan early on. I never bought into that as a reality, and I think we're seeing it unfold. Very good team, could still do all those things, but all-time team, please. Please.
All right. So that brings us to your opposing lineup brought to you by the Brothers Just Two Gutters. Friends, you all have gutters, whether it's in your home or your business, make sure they're operating and functioning properly. If they're leaky, if they are not dispersing the water where you want, or if you just have water running off the sides, maybe they're plugged up, whatever it might be, the Brothers Just Gutters can take care of that. They can do it real quick. They're not super busy right now because it's the season, but they can get out there and do it, even though it's snowy everywhere, certainly over where I am. It's going to snow, I think, 7 straight days. So make sure those things are working right. You get great pricing with the Brothers Just Two Gutters. And of course, super nice guys. They'll come out real quick. They get you 10% off your estimate if you mention Final Four when you get that. And you can do that and contact them through our support page at the Final Four is not the schedule.com/support. There you can find the links for the brothers. And they, of course, sponsor the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter, which, before the season, I think it would have been interesting whether you would have picked Biddle or Shellstead. And now it would be interesting because who you pick, because they don't have Shellstead or Biddle. So I'm waiting with bated breath here. Being the starters, the one you mentioned before, the 6'4" sophomore from China, Wei Lin. October 2nd. Wow, that's really late. He's averaging 6.5 points a game, 1.7 assists per game, shooting 32, 27, 84. He did score a bunch of points against Rutgers, but then, that's Rutgers.
Yeah. I mean, they're thanking God they added him. And I don't recall 100% the narrative of how things unfolded with Shellstad's injury, whether he got hurt before they added this guy. Given that it was October 2nd, it's right in there. But either way, as bad as things are at Oregon, and they're bad, how much worse would it be if they had not added somebody who can at least, and he's not really a point guard, but he can masquerade as one and look semi-legitimate. He's a very important player for them now because somebody's got to shoot the ball, right? And he's a pretty good candidate to do so. The efficiency, though, this is a guy, he's had games where he might go like 4 for 7 for 3, but he's also had games, even in this stretch of double-digit scoring, where he went 1 for 10 from 3 in a game. So whether he's making shots or not is very much a coin flip. And if he's not making shots, he's still going to be taking a lot of them. Yeah. So there's a downside that comes in pretty fast.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder where because he's listed as a sophomore. I was trying to figure out where he played before, but he's 22 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
And
he played in the CBA, the Chinese Basketball Association,
and played for the Nanjing Monkey Kings. So there you go, for 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, actually I knew that because I was watching an Oregon. I think it was the Oregon.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me you watched the Monkey Kings play.
No, not that crazy. But somebody mentioned it wasn't the Michigan game; it was the game before that. And it came up, and the broadcaster was talking about, I think it was the color guy, whoever, it might have been Don McClain, talking about how they wanted to get a Monkey Kings jersey. He said, somewhere in there is a crown.
Next is Takai Simpsons. He's 6'5", senior, transfer from Elon, averaging 12.5 points a game, shooting 43, 37, and 77. More than half his shots come from outside the arc. And I guess, he brings some shooting and some offense to a team that doesn't have a whole lot.
Yeah, they were counting on him when they added him in the portal, and he has proven to be a good addition. Those efficiency numbers are solid. Giving them 12.5 points. If things were better, if they had a healthy Shellstead, they had a healthy Biddle, you could look at Simpkins as a third or fourth guy in the reign, and you'd feel pretty good. Right now, he's probably 1 or 2. That's a different world.
Yeah, actually, I was just looking too about Wei Lin or Lin Wei. But anyway, he was actually drafted by a G League team, the Texas Legends, 8th overall in the 2025 draft. So kind of weird.
Why not?
Next, we have Devin Pryor, 6'7" junior, averaging 3.3 points a game, a little under 3 rebounds a game. Plays 20 minutes, so plays a decent amount, shooting 43, 25, and 47. And unfortunately for them, half his shots are from outside the arc.
He came over from Texas, and I think honestly they were hoping for more production. I mean,
Sure.
20 minutes a game is a decent amount of playing time, and he's just not doing much in the way of counting stats. So for Oregon to be competitive at all here as they go forward into the bleak unknown, he's got to be more of a factor.
So weird. I feel like we're talking about Rutgers 5 years ago or something, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
That's strange. Then we have Sean Stewart, 6'9", 240-pound junior. He came from Ohio State. Began his career at Duke. So obviously he was a highly rated high school recruit. He's averaging 7.2 points a game, 5.8 rebounds a game, shooting 53% from the floor, a pathetic 50% from the line. Although he did have 22 points and 8 rebounds against Michigan on Saturday. So, I mean, I guess it's somewhere inside him.
He was a McDonald's All-American. And, normally if you're a recruit at Duke, you're a high-profile guy, and he was.
Exactly.
It has not worked for him. Ohio State got him after he had struggled to play consistent minutes at Duke. He transferred to Ohio State, and Ohio State thought, last year they went all in with big man transfers. They added him. They added Aaron Bradshaw, who had been at Kentucky,
right,
who was a 7-foot center. Again, McDonald's All-American, all that stuff. And it all fell to crap.
Yeah.
Stewart was okay, but never better than okay at Ohio State. And at Oregon this year, he's never been better than okay. His game against Michigan yesterday was not just his best game of the season. I'm pretty sure it was a career game for him. And honestly, one that I think is going to be difficult for him to replicate. He was hitting mid-range shots that he doesn't hit, that he doesn't take. Yeah. And, maybe he, with all this injury stuff, he feels freed and we're going to see the real Sean Stewart, but I kind of have my doubts about that. At his best, he's a bigger, active body inside, decent explosiveness athletically, decent strength, can maybe do some damage around the rim, but he's not a guy any of his 3 teams have been able to hang their hats on.
And finally, playing the 5, we have another McDonald's All-American, 6'10", 220-pound junior Kwame Evans. He is averaging 13.2 points a game, 7.5 rebounds a game, shooting 51, 34, and 77. And also he throws in a block game as well.
Yeah, he's second on the team in blocks at as you said, 1 block.
Now he's first.
Game. Yeah. Look, I think he's a guy who's at least his counting numbers are likely to grow. He is a talented kid, and he's always been an obviously talented player. And to be fair to him, I've said he underachieved. He has underachieved relative to his billing coming out of high school, which is true. But it's also true that he has shown steady improvement. His freshman year, he was a bit part guy. He didn't do a lot. Last year, he became a starter and was, not the headline guy by any means, but was improved. Solid player. He's taken a step up again this season. And I think, as I say, at a necessity, the counting numbers at least are going to grow. He's the reason he was ranked so high and the reason expectations were as high as they were with him is, as it often is with guys like him, he's 6'10" with good strength. He can hit threes occasionally. He's a good enough athlete that he kind of pops that way. You just look at the combination of physical tools and skill set, and you think, well, there's a very, very, very good player in there. And oftentimes with guys like that, they just have a hard time harnessing it all.
Yeah.
And Evans, as I say, to be fair to him, is starting to show signs of putting the package together, but I'm not remotely convinced that he's a guy that you can just say, carry my team. Right. He isn't there yet. Maybe next year.
Well, I mean, Michigan State's had their 6'10" McDonald's All-American experience as well. And, that one went even worse than I think Evans has. So
way worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of seems like Oregon's in some ways gone through the McDonald's All-American drive-through and gotten some other things. All right. So moving to the reserves, Desrick Lindsay, 6'6", 215-pound junior. He was a JUCO last season, or the year before, I guess, but missed it last year because of injury, which seems to be a Oregon theme here. He's averaging a little under 5 points a game, 3 rebounds a game, plays about 20 minutes, so decent amount, and he's shooting pretty well, 39, 35, and 56. So I should say pretty good from 3.
Yeah, and this is things are where Oregon's been hit and they've been hit in a lot of different ways, but one area they've definitely been hit in with these injuries is their rotation has gone from where Lindsey would have been the 8th man and would have been okay in that role. It would have made sense. Now he's the 6th man.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. Everybody else we're going to talk about is a player with limited to no track record in college. We got one guy who switched sports. I mean, it's a bad scene. So they need Lindsey to expand his role and start doing a lot more productivity-wise in a hurry.
Well, speaking of players who switch sports, Drew Carter, 6'3" senior. He was actually a quarterback at Colorado before transferred to UC Davis to play some basketball. So they played for about 4 games so far, the Oregon. But hey, he's got a pulse and he can play now, right? So he's averaging a little over a point a game, shooting 27, 31, and 100, obviously in very limited volume.
That's exactly right. He has a pulse is probably
you're fogging me
here. Think about it. It really is. It's sad, but that's the case. It's just, it's tough, man. You're Dana Altman. You look up and down that bench. You are not seeing many answers.
AJ Demir, 6'11", 275-pound junior. Played a couple years of pro ball in Turkey. Averaging 2.1 points a game, 3.6 rebounds a game. Plays about 10 minutes a game, shooting 43% from the floor. and almost impossible, 29% from the line.
He's big. I mean, really, he's big. And he looks big on the floor. So they've got that going for him. But yeah, with Biddle out, obviously, he becomes a clear rotation guy. There's no question he'll be in the rotation because he has to be. He's big.
Yeah, I'm sure they're just talking about spring football right now in Eugene. Then we have Luke Johnson, 6'8" sophomore. He's not scored this year, but he's averaging half a rebound a game. And so he's also not scored from the line. He's 0 for 2 from the free throw line.
Yeah, he's been playing a little bit in the last 2 games, so I threw him in there because somebody's got to play.
Just like Jamari Phillips.
It's just so bleak, man. It really is.
Jamari Phillips is a 6'3" sophomore guard. So he returned from last year. He didn't play the Michigan game because he was late to shoot around, and he's been suspended at the start of the season for a couple of games because he sold shoes, which seems a strange thing. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I would think that, like, the kid's an entrepreneur. What are you talking about?
Right. It's how we're suspending guys still.
Maybe he's doing it during a game or something. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I suppose you can't. I would imagine you get in trouble if you sold equipment that you got. Like, then maybe that's what it was. So he's like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Still whatever. Very important rules.
He's averaging 2.5 points a game on 36, 36, and 100 shooting. The 3/4 of his shots are outside the arc.
I mean, to me, it's just unclear where's this guy at with his team. So he starts the year with that 3-game suspension. Now he's late. Your team is going through a meltdown and you're late to a shoot around. Like, you can't even be bothered to it's just crazy. So I don't know. I mean, I have no way of knowing exactly what his situation is. He may well play in this game. And if he does, well, this is at least like a scholarship guy who is expected to be in the rotation. He's not doing anything dramatically great, but 36% from 3 on low volume. He's at least proven to be capable of hitting a jump shot now and then.
Right.
It's tough stuff, man.
Well, we'll finish with Alexander Kobzitsky, a 6'8" senior. He played last year a little bit, I guess. He's averaging 2.5 points, 1 rebound a game, shooting 35, 46, and 75, obviously at very low limited volume. And he only's playing a little under 8.5 minutes a game in the games he's shown up in.
Yeah, again, another bigger body. He's hit some shots, again, very limited volume. But yeah, he played last year, but sparingly. Now, I think the plan was he would play sparingly this year too, but now, I mean, he's breathing, right? He's breathing, right. And he's 6'8", so.
All right. Well, I'm intrigued. It's just who you're going to pick for the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter in this game. I mean, I guess I could see a couple, obviously no one on the bench.
It's challenging. I'm going to go with the obvious choice. So the guy who actually is leading the current players in scoring, Kwame Evans. He's the most talented guy. He's a tough cover because he can do a lot of different things, as we talked about. And so, yeah, he's my pick. But truthfully, it could be any. If the jumpers are falling for him, could easily be him. I think Simpkins is a good enough shooter that if he's dialed in on a given day, could be him. And we saw Sean Stewart led them in scoring against Michigan. So there are a few guys you could go with, but Evans to me is the safe pick.
Yeah, so we'll go with the guy inside, and we'll see. I'm a little concerned if you're the other opposing team, if your best player is an interior player, just with if you got Cooper and Kohler to deal with.
Yep. And Cooper will get Evans early.
Oh, for sure.
Because Evans is despite the fact Stewart hit a jumper or two, he's not nearly as versatile a player as Evans is. So
you're not going to have Kohler chase him all over the court.
Which means that Evans has a tougher assignment.
Yeah, right. All right. So that brings us to the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Who cleans glass best? Right now it is 9-8. I'm ahead by 1. For those who recall, let's see, we have 13 games to go now in the season. So obviously anyone's.
Isn't that amazing? Only 13 regular season games
left. It is really
like yesterday.
It goes slow. I will tell you, it kind of like plods along for a while. And then all of a sudden it's just like, we just get, especially when you get a conference play, it's just like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
We did a post game today. We're doing pregame. 2 days we're gonna do post game. Then we're gonna do a pregame the next day. Or it's just there aren't breaks. Like I felt like even a couple of years ago, I felt like we sometimes would have like almost a week break. Sometimes they have like 6 days off, and it just maybe there is one now. I haven't looked.
You do, and I haven't looked at the Michigan State schedule. Well, I could tell you there is one of those that is built in. You're
like
right.
5 days maybe at most. It can't be that long though.
Yeah. So,
well, while you're looking that up, I'm just to talk about the Squeegee Squad. Obviously, they can come out even in weather like this, whether it's your business or your home. They'll get those windows clean. 15% off. You mentioned Final Four when you get your estimate from Troy and his team. Even if you're not in Grand Rapids, if you're Kent County, a surrounding county, give them a call. They can take care of whatever it is usually, and they can get there. And then they're even out in this weather right now, so they'll make sure those windows are nice and clean. So you watch the pretty snowfall as you don't have to shovel it up. Maybe have someone else do it for you. So give them a call today. You can go and get a hold of Troy and his team, of course, at our support page at the Final Four, it's not the schedule.com/support, or if you're lazy, tffinots.com/support. Call them today. You'd be very glad you did. So what do you have for the schedule?
Between February 7th and February 13th. So they play Illinois at home on Saturday, February 7th, and then don't play again until Friday, February 13th in Madison. That's the stretch. And everybody, I think, gets one of those.
All right. So like it's mentioned, I'm up 9-8 right now. I do get to pick first, which is good. So I'm going to obviously start with Kohler, and I imagine you're taking Cooper.
I'm taking Cooper, and in what we know ultimately is a big role in deciding these things. It's tough.
You can think about these things ahead of time, and then you get to the time, you're like, maybe I'm really, you can talk yourself into or out of any sort of choice.
I'm going to go with the hot hand and go with Cam Ward.
Yeah. I figure that's what you take. I'll stick with Carr because I don't need a ton of rebounds from him, hopefully. This will be a weird game because I tell you what, I know Michigan only won by 10, but you can really envision this game getting out of hand pretty quick. And then you can get some strange lineups and starters not playing and weird things going on. So you might be really good shape with Ward. I mean, it's possible he get a big turn here. The freshman gets some time on the floor. McCullough too. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully things go well. And sometimes you think you know how the game's going to turn out, and of course it doesn't go the way you expect. That's things that what you can really expect is if you go to Nudge Printing, you make sure you're going to get really great products, apparel, all kinds of Spartan stuff. I'm wearing our full zip up hoodie right now. I think you can get this at the Nudge Printing website. You go to nudgeprinting.com/win. But if nothing else, you can go there and you enter for free in the drawing for the Michigan State Tiff Knots hoodie. I've got a couple of those. My kids wear them all the time too. So head over there today. You'll be glad you did. Of course, it costs nothing. While you're there, you can check out all the rest of the great products that Nudge has, from hats to hoodies to t-shirts, quarter zips, whatever it might be. They got all kinds of stuff there. 20% off if you type in Tiff Knots. That's TFFINOTS at checkout. So 20% off your order. Do it today. You'll be very glad you did. Get a gift for yourself and your friend or family. All right. So the first key to the game is playing the game, not the opponent. Now, we're not talking about this. I feel like this is always the tomato can thing that starts the key.
Yeah. But, here's the thing. They're human beings, right? And with the state of affairs in Eugene, and these guys know, and they're gonna get it, as they're already, I'm sure, getting into the scouting reports as we're recording this. No Nate Biddle, no Jackson Shelstead. They know what that means.
Yeah.
They played those guys, right? They played those guys twice last year. Played them in the regular season, then played them in the Big Ten tournament. So they know what those guys are and how much they would mean to that team. And they know that they're out. So the temptation, the human thing, is to rev the engine down a little bit. I don't think they're going to do that, though. The fact that it's a road game, I think the fact that Oregon did actually play hard and play competitively against Michigan helps. It helps the coaching staff certainly be able to get the players' attention far better than if Oregon had their doors blown off.
Right.
So that's what you hope for if you're MSU. But the key is guys just need to be locked in and focus on playing to Michigan State standards rather than playing to whatever Oregon is or isn't at this point.
I got to imagine too, especially just looking at someone like Jackson Kohler, who did not have a good game last
He's going to be motivated.
That guy, if we had who's going to score the most, I would almost go with Kohler. I think he's going to be, I think he's going to
You would think he'll be highly motivated. Carr as well.
Yeah.
Izzo was talking about it in the post game. They said they've got to, now it may take until they get back to East Lansing and they have some practice time, but he said they got to work on finding ways to get Cohen in good scoring positions when teams are playing him the way that they are.
All right, the second key to the game is the glass. So the good news for Oregon is they are a really good offensive rebounding team. The really bad news for Oregon is Michigan State is the best defensive rebounding team in the country and also good offensive rebounding team, and Oregon's not a great defensive rebounding team. So maybe that's all bad news for Oregon.
Yeah, it's the one thing they do unquestionably well, like either end of the court. The only thing you could say they're good in that area is offensive rebounding. And it's true even without Biddle. They were at a 39% clip against Michigan without him yesterday, right? The problem is it's going right up against Michigan State as the number one defensive rebounding team in America. Now, we had said going into the Washington game, Washington was not quite as good an offensive rebounding team as Oregon, but pretty close. They were in the top 50. And we had said, that's an area where Michigan State will get challenged. And we'll see how the number one defensive rebounding team shores up. Well, a day later, they held them to a 10% rate, which is insane. That's off the charts. Great, especially given Washington's size and those players. Like it's hard to fathom. Can MSU do something similar in this game? At the other end, it's a weakness for Oregon and it's a strength for Michigan State. I think they're 8th currently in offensive rebounding. You would expect Michigan State to, per usual, have a lot of opportunities. And you'd probably, in a game like this, be a little bit disappointed with anything too much south of 40 as a target.
Right.
That's kind of where I would come in expecting, and we'll see what happens. Which, again, is crazy to talk about that. That's kind of, they did an okay job if they get to 40. That's crazy, just for context. But that's the standard they've set.
Yeah. Well, when you're one of the best teams in the country, yeah, your standards are pretty high. So the third key to the game is inside the arc. And of course, oftentimes we're worried about what the teams can do outside the arc, but this is more about Michigan State, right? Hitting things that are worth less than 3 points.
Yeah. So let's put this let's give you some numbers. So Oregon is a middling defense against twos, and now without Biddle, it's likely to be even worse.
Sure.
For most of the year, we've spent some time talking about this. 2-point offense has been an issue for Michigan State. But as of late, as we've also emphasized here, we've seen substantial improvement. So over its last 4 games, MSU is 86 for 142 on 2-point shots. That's a percentage of 61%. That's 8% higher than MSU's current seasonal average from 2, which includes data from those 4 games.
Right. So 10 points higher or something.
They are, or more. So they've climbed from nearly falling out of the top 200 in 2-point percentage nationally to number 125. And I would say that number needs to continue to get better. How does that happen? It happens just the way it's been happening the last 4 games, a combination of several things. I think the most obvious one is they've finished better at the rim. We talked about how good Jeremy Fears has been the last couple games, in particular, in terms of getting himself downhill into good scoring positions in the lane and at the rim, and then finishing those plays, something he was struggling with a bit during December. Second way, turning more offensive rebounds into points. So that means getting those offensive rebounds at the rim and putting it back and in the basket. Those are easy points, and things that you should convert at an efficient rate. And then the third thing is more transition play. Generally speaking, if MSU's in transition, they're going to be getting a lot of 2-point baskets because they're going to be scoring on layups and dunks. So as long as those 3 things continue, better finishing at the rim, turning more offensive rebounding dominance into more point production, and getting into transition consistently, you're going to continue to see Michigan State's 2-point shooting improve. And it needs to.
Well, and it also helps too if you miss shots, if you're getting fouled, that they don't count as missed shots too, which that happened quite a bit.
They've been doing that as well, staying aggressive. That was something else that had gone into a little bit of a lull for a while this season, and now seems to be ticking back the right direction once again.
Yeah, it's interesting now that I think they got the 3-point shooting up to 50th in the country, and now they're slid back up sub 100, I think.
It doesn't take much to make those kind of moves.
Right.
You have 2 or 3, mediocre games, and that's all it's been. Against Washington, they were 32%. It wasn't great, but it wasn't like a disaster. That was an average game for last year's team, or a little better than an average game.
Right.
And but it does, the 3-point. But this is where they are right now, more or less, somewhere around 35, 36% as a team. That's kind of where I think they are.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's plenty good enough to win with if you're shooting 2s the way you can and should.
Exactly. And certainly the volume of 2s that Michigan State's used to shooting. So the fourth key of the game is the transition game. This is one that, the one thing I guess knock against last game is they only had 10 fast break points. And that was, I think, right. Sometimes we sort of quibble about whether those were actually tabulated correctly, but that seemed about right.
It tracked. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. They still lead the Big Ten in fast break points, but give Washington credit. That was something I think they committed to taking away, and they largely did. This is the thing that I think is interesting about this game. So we know Michigan State doesn't ever enter games trying to force turnovers, right?
Right.
But Oregon has major turnover issues, and a lot of them are live ball types. So their overall turnover percentage is miserable, right? But they're also number 275 in steal percentage on offense, which means teams are taking the ball away in live ball play with alarming frequency. That's what you want if you're Michigan State. If it's a lot of travels, balls going out of bounds, offensive fouls on an illegal screen, that kind of stuff, those are turnovers that, yeah, you don't like them, but they're not, the negativity isn't necessarily compounded. When they're steals, you can have real problems, especially playing a team like Michigan State that wants to run. So this could be an equation where Michigan State may be able to get in the open floor a lot based on the way Oregon's mistakes pile up. That's what you're hoping for if you're MSU. Then on top of that, you have the fact that several of the guys who are going to play for Oregon haven't really dealt with MSU's transition game, and it could be a good situation for MSU to do damage on the break. So I think there's an opportunity here. Now, we've talked about, I personally, if I were Dana Altman, I would be looking to slow this game down. I don't know that he will. If he does, this will be one of the main reasons why. He doesn't want to give Michigan State any opportunities to get out and transition, get easy baskets.
So you don't think the Monkey Kings ever saw a team with a transition game like Michigan State?
Probably not. The Shanghai Sharks don't. I don't think they push off made opponent baskets.
There's gonna be somebody who looked it up to see if there are the Shanghai Sharks. You know that
there
right?
Are. That is a team. Yeah, that's a real team.
Is that your team when you watch Chinese basketball?
I don't have a team. I can't remember off the top of my head who played for them. It might have been Yao Ming.
Okay.
I think played for them, but I know the name.
So finally, we have for the fifth key of the game is defend without fouling, and Michigan State has crept up and I guess have been consistently getting a little bit better at this, where they're top 50 now in defending without fouling while still maintaining the number one defense in the country.
This has recently become my favorite stat to talk about, and I brought it up at Spartan Mag Board. I brought it up again in our post game from Washington. Because the Washington game was a good example of it, but also because there are some pretty interesting historical elements to that. And by the way, I think you can be just fine. You can be a very, very good defensive team and be more foul prone than Michigan State has been. It's not that, they got to go together. Michigan State's had teams that committed tons of fouls and were great defensively. It all comes out in the wash. If you're doing that, it means that factors in. So it means that despite the free throw attempts opponents are getting, you're still limiting them in scoring, right?
Mm-hmm.
For this team, I think it matters in particular because if you look at the way they're defending opponents shooting, they're very good. They're not elite. They are outside the top 25 in defending against both threes and twos. Again, still really good, but they are not the kind of lockdown team. Frequently, Michigan State's great defensive teams, you've had teams that opponents just can't buy a basket against them.
Right.
This team is not quite that. And we've talked about it. I would say in the starting lineup, you've got two high-level defenders individual defenders in Fears and Cooper. You've got one guy in Ugachukwu that I think is pretty solid, but is still learning the Michigan State way of doing things. So you wouldn't say he's a lockdown guy yet. And then you've got two other. Well, Cohen Carr, I guess, is progressing,
starting to emerge more more and more.
He is. But then Jackson Kohler, you're talking about being functional, and he has been functional. And then you come in with other guys. You've got Ward and Scott, who are both great for freshmen, but they are freshmen. They're prone to some occasional mistakes. The two guard in particular with Kerr, and although it's impacting things to a lesser extent now, Trey, not as consistent. But I guess the point is, this is not a team that I would stack up with the greats over the years from Michigan State in terms of possession to possession ability to just lock you down and limit your ability to hit shots.
Right.
They're good at it. They're not elite. The reason that they are the number one defense in the country, despite that, is that they do two things at an elite level. They absolutely limit you to one shot. They're number one in the country in defensive rebounding. That's huge. And they're not fouling. They're doing all of this without giving teams easy chances to score while the clock is stopped. And that's huge. And so that's why I think it matters maybe more for this team than some others that they're not foul prone, because you can't rely on them just shutting opposing shooters down, locking them up at quite the elite level that maybe some other Michigan State teams have had. So that's why I think it's important, why I'm spending a lot of time talking about it lately. And then again, just to bring it back up, the correlation when Michigan State has this kind of equation between doing these things defensively and the team having great success in March is striking. They've only been inside the top 50 in defensive foul rate 3 times in Tom Izzo's tenure before this season. All three of those seasons, and all three of those seasons, they had very good to elite defenses like this team is. All three of those seasons, they've been in a Final Four. So it tells you how important it could be that it continue. And you just want to, Oregon is going to test you less than they would have with Biddle and Shellstead, to state the obvious.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
But you just, no matter who's out there, you just want to keep this going. They've been getting even better lately in defending without fouling. You just want to keep that to be a consistent habit.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think as far as we talked about transition, but just kind of going back to that a little bit, I wonder with what Washington did, I wonder if we see that a little bit more for Oregon. Yeah, it's the strength of Oregon. It's like, as you mentioned, it's their only strength is offensive rebounding, but don't you wonder too, if they just kind of bail out and just give up like they did, like Washington did, because I mean, that was a reflection more of Washington just not even trying, right? To get 10%, you have to really not even bother.
I think clearly that was a part of it. No question. It's a real conundrum, because if you're Dana Altman, you look at your team and you say, okay, we can't really shoot. We're down our 2 best offensive players by far. How the hell are we going to manufacture enough points to win? Well, oftentimes one way you do that is, you're not looking at this team and saying, we're going to go out, we're going to get hot from 3. Like that could happen, but you can't plan for it.
Yeah.
What you could plan for is say, we're going to attack the offensive boards. We're sending guys. We're going to be relentless. We're going to just throw the ball at the backboard and hope that it ends up in the right colored jersey hands, and we get some point production that way. The danger is you do that, you really sell out, you are leaving yourself exposed for Michigan State to just run a dunk show.
Yeah.
The other end. So you're right. It creates a real problem. The safest thing for Dana Altman to do, I keep saying this, to me, is slow the pace down, which would mean you prioritize floor balance and you are not sending guys as aggressively as you might normally. Whether that happens or not, anybody's guess. It'll be interesting to see how they choose to play it.
Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking about too with the defense for Michigan State, the thing that I would be a little scared of if I'm the rest of the Big Ten is, we're looking at this Michigan State team, and from a defensive standpoint, I mean, obviously the rebounding is going to be, I think that's going to be what it's going to be throughout the end of the year. It's hard to imagine that changing much. You don't see the fouling changing a whole lot either, probably, but you really see the connectedness and the ability to sort of shut people down as just getting better throughout the rest of the season. I mean, that's generally what happens for Michigan State, assuming everyone stays healthy.
Yeah.
That's kind of a terrifying thought if you're another opposing team, because to think that this team's going to limit you one shot and maybe they will become harder. It's not crazy to imagine that Carr really the next 2 months becomes more of a shutdown sort of defender. I mean, we can definitely see that, right? We saw Jaden Akins do it, and Carr has even more athletic ability than Jaden, just a little less experience, but that's coming along.
And I don't think,
and that the 2 spot gets a little bit better. I mean, boy,
that's what I was going to say.
You could this team could be insanely good, and they may be peaking. I mean, because I think, the one thing you'd say, looking at, like, let's just look globally, like, Michigan, they had a fantastic November. There's no question. They were, otherworldly sort of stats. And you never want to peak early, but you can peak early if you stay that, plateau the rest of the year and you stay that good, and it's fine. But
that doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen very often. And historically, if you're undefeated going into the turn of the calendar, you actually never win the national title. It's really weird over the last 50 years or 40 years or something like that. But you see Michigan State, and I mean, I'm watching this team. I think, they're very, obviously Michigan State's very good. They're 16-2, but there's so much more. You think that their floor is just really pretty high, I think. But the ceiling is, it's kind of hard to even calculate where it is as a team.
And this is, see what you're getting at. And by the way, if you were a fan of Illinois and maybe even to some extent a fan of Nebraska, I think would be justified in feeling exactly the same way, where you're looking at it and saying, hey, we're really good right now, but this isn't necessarily where it stops. There are ways we can get better. Michigan State, clearly, it's why I just think so many of these national guys and I get it. It's hard to stay on top of, even if you're just focusing primarily on the high major conferences, it's hard to stay on top of whatever it is, 60 some teams.
Yeah, especially a team that's never had success in the postseason, right? Like Michigan State. Right.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though. I was going to say that. There's no excuse for not doing it with Michigan State, because it's brand name. You know what you're dealing with, or you should. But it takes, these guys struggle to update the narratives. Yeah. At the end of December, you could have easily made a good case, a defensible case. Hey, Michigan is just separated from everybody else right now.
Yeah.
And then you could also toss in Purdue hasn't played as well, but they're still winning games. They had the one weird one, but they're still winning games, and they've got all that talent back, and they're proven commodities, blah blah blah. That stuff is out there, and I'm still hearing guys this weekend talking about that. They're wrong. Now, they might end up being right, because maybe things change again. Michigan finds another gear. All of a sudden, the threes start falling again. Their defensive lapses on the perimeter clean up. But I'm not convinced that's going to be the case. I think what we're seeing lately is more reflective of what Michigan actually is. A very good team, but hardly an all-time elite one, not even close. So, bring it back around to what we really care about, Michigan State. I think everything you say is true. On the defensive end, Cohen Carr can improve his consistency. As the two freshmen, Ward and Scott, see gradually expanding roles, both of those guys, I have a ton of faith in them defensively. That, if you put it this way, if you've got a lineup of, let's just say for argument's sake, Cam Ward and Carson Cooper as the posts, that's a better defensive group than Kohler. And no knock on Jackson, but that's just the truth.
Yeah, sure.
And Jesus, Jordan Scott probably would be my choice for their third best individual defender behind the two guys we highlighted. Mm-hmm. Ugochukwu, Tang just continue to improve incrementally as they're playing more, getting more comfortable with the system. Easy to imagine that happening. Now, in fairness, Michigan State is, especially as we hit February, back half of the Big Ten schedule, Michigan State is going to see high caliber offenses. Purdue, I think, is still number one in the country in offensive efficiency. Michigan's right up there. Illinois is right up there. they're gonna see Wisconsin. Even I'm not sure where they are in the race, but I think they're playing much better offensive basketball lately. I still question them defensively, but so they're going to get tested by some teams that are maybe at a different level than what we've seen, say, since the Duke game. So they're going to be more tests for this MSU defense, but I think in general, you would expect Michigan State defensively to rise to the occasion, and they're going to be an elite defense throughout the rest of the year. I'm reasonably certain in that. As you mentioned, rebounding, no reason to expect that goes anywhere. They kind of are what they are at this point.
Yeah, right.
Best, in my mind, the best two-way rebounding team in America. I don't think anybody else is doing it at both ends to the level they are. So then it really comes down to what I think people have been talking about for most of the year, which is the offense. And how good can Michigan State be offensively? And that's why I'm very encouraged by the recent uptick in 2-point shooting, because in this program, that's what you hang your hat on. You never take excessive amounts of threes. So most of your shots are coming from 2. You got to be efficient. The two things, and I think, by the way, I think that's going to keep improving. I don't see a reason to expect that it won't remain at least significantly better than it was in November and December. How much north it goes from here remains to be seen, but I think they've found a level that I don't think is likely to change too dramatically. So to me, the two things that you gotta worry about are turnovers, and we had a great day in Seattle yesterday.
Yep.
But can they maintain that? Can they keep the turnovers to a reasonable amount? Because honestly, it had been bad for a while. Like, we probably hadn't been emphasizing enough what a problem it's been.
Exactly.
Certainly you can attribute the loss against Nebraska to turnovers. Where they have 19, I think, in that game. That's
it seemed like it.
Yeah, and they were terrible. They were awful turnovers. Guys stepping on sidelines, just bad stuff.
Yeah.
Can't have that. And then of late, the free throw shooting. You gotta, there's a Cohen Carr, because of who he is as a player, is always going to be a guy who's at the line. You would expect him to be taking free throws in essentially every game he plays, probably multiple times. He's got to get better.
Yep.
Even guys like Coop, Jeremy is still good, but maybe not quite as elite as he'd been earlier in the season. There's just, and then, guys like Cam Ward, if he's playing more, he's probably going to be there more often. That's not exactly something you feel comfortable with right now.
Not at all. Yeah.
Even guys like Devine that, and Kerr that you think aren't 100% reliable just yet. So those are the two areas that I think right now, assuming the 2-point shooting keeps the momentum remains in place there, those are the areas that I think are going to determine the ceiling as to how good this team can be offensively. And honestly, that probably, as much as anything else, determines where they can go in March. Now, I am not a believer that it has to get much, much better from here for this team to have any chance of going to a Final Four or even winning a national title. I think their defense and their rebounding is so good that they're gonna have a chance in every game they play. And let's be honest, the 2 games they've lost, well, they lost by a bucket on the road. They lost by, I think, 6 to Duke. That's where this team is at, with an offense that I think everybody universally among the Michigan State fan base doesn't feel is at its ceiling, doesn't feel like it's been
not even close, really. Yeah.
Be. So for anybody to be talking about Michigan State as anything other than a legitimate contender for everything, I think they're wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to this spot with last year's team probably roughly about this time of year, maybe a week or so earlier. I just became convinced, you know what? They're legit. They're gonna be in it for everything, and they were. I am at that spot with this team. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be bumps in the road. Doesn't mean anything's given, but I've seen enough that I'm convinced of what they are, and I'm optimistic about what they can be.
Well, I know when we were just doing the preseason for Michigan State, and we gone through all the other Big Ten teams. I know, and I mentioned to you, and I felt pretty confident this was going to be a better team than last year's team. I just thought it looked like it had better pieces. It's gotten better in ways I didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
And I thought the problem might be that the rest of the Big Ten's much better than they were last year as well. And that still is probably true as well. But but last year's team went to the Elite Eight. There's no reason to think this team could do anything. I mean, all kinds of crazy things happen in the tournament. Yeah, well, no, I totally agree. But just like,
and here's the other thing.
I'm surprised they're so much better. Not so much better. Well, I think they are better than last year's team. I mean, I think I think it's probably mathematically true.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing because, you think about last year's team, and I think in most people's minds, I know in mine, I think about the team that went through that gauntlet of whatever it was, 6 games in a row against ranked teams, where supposedly that was where things were going to get rough for Michigan State.
Right.
They ran the table.
Yep.
You think about that team, you think about the Jace Richardson that was a threat to score 20 any given night. That didn't really come into play until right after that West Coast swing. So even a couple weeks from now on the calendar, that didn't really happen, where Jace went from good to very good player to the guy.
Yeah.
So you don't know what's out there for this team. Doesn't mean it automatically happens, but you don't know. Do they find ways to get Cohen back on track offensively? That could be a huge deal. Do we see continued growth from guys like Ward and Scott and Tang, and Devine even offensively, where they're just suddenly stepping up? It doesn't have to be even one guy suddenly going from a 12-point-a-night guy to a 20-point-a-night guy. Right. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be, I think we're seeing it, and maybe this is the answer, actually. I think we've seen it lately with Jeremy Fears.
I was going to say, we really have not talked about the fact that he's like a 17-point scorer the last 5 games or something like that. It's
basically since
remarkable.
Big Ten plays kick back in. Yeah. And lately doing it very efficiently. Right. And so that might end up, we might look back in March and say, yeah, Jeremy became that guy. Now, I personally think that's probably not likely to be the case, nor do I think that's necessarily the best thing for this team, because you always want Jeremy to be the guy who's making everybody else better too. Don't get me wrong, I love the point production, but I don't think he's the guy. You don't want to be looking at him as someone who has to be in the same role that, say, Jace Richardson was last year. But again, I don't know that this team necessarily needs that. I can see enough improvement coming from enough guys that it all adds up cumulatively to what they need it to be.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. We'll be back, of course, after the game at Oregon, which is probably going to be 11 something. I'll be back to join us live, please, on YouTube or X. Feel free to comment, subscribe to the show, of course. If you've not yet already, you can obviously support the show in other ways too. If you just go to our support page and visit all our sponsors at tffinots.com/support. So until Tuesday, till next time, the Final Four is not the schedule. Go green.